I'm Matthew Kerbis, the subscription attorney, and this is Law Subscribed, your dedicated source for all things subscriptions and the law. Thank you to my sponsors. See links to them in the show notes. Everything discussed is only for educational and entertainment purposes. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to our joint session on how to run a law firm in 2025. Today, we're getting to the good stuff. It's all been good stuff, but I know the stuff that I get questions about a lot. I know Matthew gets questions about a lot. We are diving into the software that we use to run our law practices. And like we discussed in the last episode and even a couple episodes back, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We've been in practice several years now, and so we've accumulated softwares along the way. But by no means are we saying this is absolutely the list of everything that you have to have. I think that you can do a pretty bare minimum approach when it comes to software and run a really successful practice, especially in the beginning as you're figuring out what works for you, what do you need things to do, what's going to be overkill. So we'll give you a lot of ideas today, but take it all with a little bit of a grain of salt and know that you need to find what's going to work best for you. But with that, we're also not going to talk too much about AI today. We will save that for a separate conversation because that is a whole new world that we are all exploring, and there's so much opportunity there. So we're really just going to focus on the softwares that we use to run our business on the day to day. So, Matthew, if we had to start all over and you were having no revenue, so right, money was tight, and there was only a couple of things that you could add on for software to run your practice, where would you start?
It's a really important question. And I think even like that's hard to say, like, okay, I only need like one or two things because like you kind of can't. I will say, and if you've watched this whole series on video, you've seen me lift up my Calendly connectors mug and take a sip. Well, Calendly is one of those tools that you absolutely can't live without because it's free to sign up and and even though you could only have one event type when you're just getting started, like 15 or 30 minutes is a good sweet spot. And that's how you schedule potential and current client calls and other calls and just get started. It's free. And then it's $10 a month, like for the solo independent plan, whatever they're calling it now. They changed their branding. Even as a Calendly connector, I can't keep up. So whatever that $10 a month plan is paid in a year in advance, like you don't have to get a lot of clients and a lot of revenue to start paying for something like that, but you don't need to right away. Wait until you have some revenue. You could use the tool for free, start using it. Um, the other tool is Stripe. You got to get paid. That's another free tool to use. You just sign up. You could create products, you could create subscriptions, you could do all these things in it. We talked about opening up bank accounts. So you'll have the bank accounts that you'll sign in into your bank account information so that you could integrate those accounts with Stripe. And frankly, like if you're in a space or practice area where you need to leverage the IOLTA account, Confido Legal, right? Formerly Gravity Legal, like they are a lot like Stripe. They don't have all the features of Stripe, but they have way more than enough for actual law firms because it's like Stripe built purpose first for law firms. I think they take like a 0.01 more percent than Stripe, right? So like would you give up $3 to make 97? I say absolutely 100% of the time. For folks that need the IOLTA side of things, you could pay for out of your operating account for credit card and ACH transfers into your IOLTA account, leveraging Confido Legal. It is built so you could do that. That's what you're paying that extra 0.01% for, is for that type of a feature. And so either a payment processor, a scheduler, I happen to prefer Calendly. Um, and the other thing that's implicit with all of that is you need an email to sign up with it. So then you have to talk about two other like software platform type things. So either Microsoft 365, where I think their entry level is the same as Google Workspace, which is the other one, which is around $6 a month just to get started. But then you also need a domain. And so you need to pay, $30, $30 to $40 a year. Those prices do keep going up for a professional domain. And we talked about branding and getting a domain and all that stuff in a previous episode. So I think I've limited it to four, things that you need to get started, which is really hard to do, but that's how I got started. How about you, Lauren? How did you what was the software? Like if let's say today, if you were to be starting over all over again, because I know when you got started was a long time ago, the software available was different. So if you're getting started again today, what are just the few pieces of software you would choose?
I agree with you. So I always start with it's a business. We've got to generate revenue. So being efficient and producing cool videos and all that stuff is wonderful, but if you're not making money, you're not paying the bills. So how would I get folks in the door? I agree with you, having a way for them to easily schedule calls. I use Acuity for a long time. I did always start with their paid plan because I had a number of different types of events, but I agree with you, just a basic consultation will really get you at least started. Needing an email to have folks reach out to you, be able to set up all of these other softwares. In Colorado, we do have trust account requirements. So I use LawPay for a long time, still do for certain types of like subscription cases. They are super easy. They do the same thing as it sounds like the other one does, right? But you do want to make sure that you work with one that understands the difference between operating a trust accounts and takes the fees out of the right one, but having something where some folks can pay you. And then I would add to that list, and I don't think you have to go crazy in terms of tech, but some way for folks to sign your engagement agreement. So I had a CRM which had it all integrated. I don't think that's absolutely necessary. It certainly made it easier. But even if you just used, I think there are some free ones out there. There used to be like Sign Now, there's DocuSign, certainly, Adobe. Maybe these are ones that you already have access to, but be able to draft in Word your engagement agreement and send that out in a way, I would say, because I like having all my engagement agreements signed, that would be really important. And then I don't know if it's absolutely critical, but from my background, I would argue that it is. I think you need some sort of web presence. So this goes to the domain, right? So not only a domain for your email, but folks have got to be able to find you. And you could be out to all the networking events, talking to everybody, but they may not be willing to pull the trigger right then and there. They may want to think about it and they're going to go look you up. And so if you don't have some sort of web presence, I think that can really hurt your business. I built my website on WordPress. Again, this was my background, so this wasn't a huge lift for me, but there are some wonderful sites out there now that make it easy. There's a lot of templates. You just sign up with them and then they help you create a website. But I think that you need at least something that will give you a web presence where you can put that Calendly link or that Acuity link where folks can schedule a call with you. You can put information about how you serve your clients. But I would argue you need at least a basic web presence. You don't have to go nuts with it. You don't have to pay tens of thousands of dollars. You can certainly put something up yourself, but you need something. And so, what you use in terms of software there's a number of different options, but I'd argue that you've got to have a web online presence somewhere.
100%. And that's why we make a good team, Lauren, because that is absolutely something we need that I missed. I'll tell you still, like on like the website platform I use, because at the end of the day, like it is really important to have a website. People will ultimately hire you because they know, like, and trust you. That's where you're going to get your best clients. And so you do need a website that they can go to. In particular, I still point every client to my website and say, sign up from my website because that's my onboarding process is all automated through there. However, you don't need to spend a lot of money on it because at the end of the day, too, like in our business, just to get started, if like how are you getting clients? You're probably not spending money on marketing or doing SEO and doing all these things that are driving website traffic. So what do you need? You need a professional one-page website that clients can contact you. Like it doesn't need to cost a lot of money. There's a lot of these out there now. I've always been a big fan of card with two R's .co, CARD.co. I now spend, I think like with the sale, like they always have a Black Friday sale. And that's always when I renew, even though it's a few months in advance of when my actual renewal date is, because you end up saving like 50%. I'm paying for the pro amount or the pro plus amount or something like where you could have like up to 30 websites because I have so many domains and that's a separate problem. Um, but when I was just getting started, I was like $20 a year. And I think it's like it's around that right now to get up to 10 professional domain websites, like a year, not a month, like some like WordPress and some other places. $20 a year to get up to 10, yeah, 10 domains of custom websites with professional access to the pro templates. Because there's freemium, like you could do yourname.card.co, just like with Substack, yourbrand.substack.com, right? Similar kind of a thing. Because Substack is another one of those platforms. I'm like, make a newsletter. It's free. If we're already talking about websites. In fact, you might want to figure out a way to just like, make Substack your whole backend because you could put in links and stuff into things and like tabs and everything on Substack. or maybe it like links to like a Sweet Dash style thing, which is what I have that powers my client portal. And you could probably even put in Stripe payment links if you just want to use Stripe or Confido Legal to like start them on their subscription or pay the fee or whatever. You could probably just do that right on Substack. And if you want the custom domain on Substack, it's a one-time $50 payment. A one-time $50 payment, right? To have that custom domain backend powered by Substack. Like it depends, obviously. Like I don't necessarily recommend that's what you use for your website, but you can. And it's a content platform. And they only make money when you make money through the platform. And you can't like charge for legal fees through it because the fee splitting prohibitions probably. Consult your local ethics attorney on that. Obviously, no ethics advice given. But I've been super happy with Card. I've been able to change and move things around on my website a lot. You can't do some of the things you could do on your Squarespaces, on your WordPresses, on that. But like, do you need to? Is the question. Is do you really need to? And when you're getting started, the answer is most certainly no. So a cheap site like Card that gives you a nice professional one-page website, that's all you need to get started. Anything else?
Yeah.
Like what's next on your list, Lauren?
So I would say the lower level in terms of pricing things that I just love that made a big difference without having a huge economic impact were things like Text Expander. Zapier, I think, has a free version that does a lot. So when I started to get more clients and now the revenue was coming in relatively consistently, I then switched to okay, I've got the pipeline open, folks are finding me now how do I deliver services with more quality and more efficiently? And so I started to put those pieces together. So Text Expander is really inexpensive. I forget, I think it's like 25 or 30 bucks a year. I can't remember, but that was super helpful to be able to use consistent language where here's my welcome to being a new client email. I would just create it once and then be able to easily paste it in a new email without having to go search for it or pull it up in Word or just take time to do that. So I really love Text Expander. And then Zapier for kind of those automated tasks that you want to have happen without you having to do anything. So they do have a free version that allows you some basics. I think you can do two-step zaps, and it will limit like the number that you can run per year, but it's a pretty high or per month, but it's a pretty high number. So if you want to, when a new client comes on board, create an email folder for them, which is what I do. Like that happens automatically, or add these folders into your document management system. Drive is a great free one. I use Dropbox to be able to manage client files, but being able to add in those small tasks as I found that I was repeatedly doing them with every new client that I would onboard, really finding those spots where it's either free or a very low cost that can really save you in terms of your time and just make you a lot more efficient. So I love those ones. Those are some of my favorite ones that I still use to this day. Do you have any of those like automated time-saving ones that for their cost seem like they are well worth it in gold?
I actually, believe it or not, don't because that's part of the AI conversation. And so, like, I'm using AI more in that way. I do have a question for you though, Lauren. Like, do you know, like, are you still using Text Expander?
Yep.
Like, what are you paying? Like, what's the monthly subscription for that?
I wanna say it's 30 bucks a year, like
Oh,
super cheap.
oh, that might be totally worth it. I have found through like just trying to learn about if there's anything my Mac Mini M4 Pro does that like other Mac Minis couldn't do. I was watching some YouTube videos and I found that there is a built-in version of Text Expander in the most up-to-date Mac operating system. And it's probably been there for a long time and I never knew. You go to system settings, you scroll down to keyboard, and like you never necessarily think to look for it there. And it's under the text input heading and you do text replacements. Now, these are things like where if you put like a C in parentheses, it automatically makes it look like a copyright. So I set up all these things now in there where it like puts in my email, it puts in my like whichever email, it puts in my name, my address, my firm name, all these things. So like that's kind of like what the text expander features are, but it's just built in to the Mac operating system. Now, just like with your Calendlies, because if you have pay for Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, you get some scheduling tech in there, Microsoft Bookings, Google Appointments. It's not quite as good as the third-party solutions where that's all they do, so they focus on how could they make scheduling better, like with Calendly. Text expanders of the world are, like, how could we like really plus this product offering? So I'm sure you could do a heck of a lot more with Text Expander than you can with just text replacements in a Mac. But if you want to dabble with some of this, I have found it to be massively just convenient. Like, how many seconds are you saving? Like, you're saving a few seconds. Does Text Expander tell you how much time you saved? I'm
They
curious.
do. I get a report every week in my email of, yes, how much time I have saved by using them.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not getting that. And it's just like it's just super convenient to have that type of a feature. So I always thought about doing a text expander type thing, but then I was thinking, well, like I have to like lean in and I have to do all the things and I have to set it up and do that. And I'm already pretty efficient. And like these days, other than filling in some forms online to like attend an event, which now I have totally like quick keyed, um, I just tell AI, I want you to redraft this way. I want you to redraft that way. So saving more of that conversation to another way, another part of another episode. Looking at my list, yeah, I don't really have anything that's like specific to that. That's not like a quote unquote AI tool. But a lot of these things are AI powered. Like you mentioned e-signatures, right? Like my next subscription was like Adobe because I needed e-signature and I needed a PDF editor. And now actually Google Workspace on the business level subscription where you're paying $12 a month, which I got to pretty quickly because I needed that extra storage space up to 2 terabytes of cloud storage. Like they've released an e-signature tool now. And so I'm thinking like, is there a lower level of Adobe where I'm not paying $20 a month plus tax, where it's just the PDF editor and conversion? Because I've been testing out the Google Workspace Business Standard and above PDF e-signature, and it's very similar. It lacks some of the features, like you can't say you want somebody to sign first. So if that really matters to your practice, maybe you still need a like a DocuSign or an Adobe or whatever. But for just like random e-signature things, like you might already be paying for it. You just have to figure out if your software does it. And that's another thing. I should have mentioned this in our how we learn about new tech conversation. But if you're a Google Workspace user, you can opt in to receiving like daily or weekly updates about all the new features that they're releasing. I just learned that Notebook LM is now releasing a bunch of new features, right? Now it hasn't rolled out to me yet, but it will roll out to me eventually, which is really exciting. So that's how I learned about the PDF e-sign feature was I get these emails. And also, by the way, a Google Desktop, their calendar is now is in dark mode. You could have dark mode on your calendar, and I'm dark mode everything. And it's so annoying how on my phone, Google apps are dark mode, but on my desktop, they're not. Until now, they're starting to roll out more and more dark mode, which is really fun and exciting. So cheers to that. I think the next thing I used was some automation software, not AI, automation software. So did you have any, like, automation software, or what's next on your list, Lauren?
Yeah, Zapier is a big one for me. And then I really, since moving case management softwares, pulled a lot of the automation I was doing into Lawmatics now. It's just built in. But I think that's a good point. Just about a lot of these tech companies are constantly improving, right? That's how they stay competitive. And they're pulling in features that we all need into their system. So Google is a great example, right? Folks need to e-sign documents. That's everywhere now. And so it's smart for them to do that. So I think that it really just goes back to not assuming you're going to put something in place and set it and forget it, but constantly being able to review it. We talked about this and how do we approach tech in general in terms of our principles there. But that's such a great point is just make sure you're staying on top of what your systems do, what they may add on, and then how you could potentially consolidate. But yeah, automation for me is really big. Just being a true solo, right? Like you, Matthew, like I only have so much time in the day. I don't want to do admin tasks over and over again. Those drive me nuts. And so any way that I can find where it will just do it automatically is definitely something that I'll put in place. I even do within Gmail, within Google's Workspace that runs my email, I put in filters for all of my clients. So this isn't like super techy, but when I get a new client, I create a filter. If I get any email to or from this email address, then put it in this folder. And that helps me keep my inbox organized because I don't need 50 emails every hour popping in there. I want to be able to say, oh, Jane Doe sent me a new email. I'm working on her case. Let me go see what her email was about. Was it maybe something I was waiting on? So even things like that where it's not the cool automation, right? It doesn't necessarily work on its own, but once you set it up, things will run in the background and will keep you more organized and just make running the practice a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, and I gotta check our planning doc because do we have talk about SOPs on there? Because like, that standard operating procedure of setting up a filter, email comes in, it goes to a folder, and how you handle that, I think is a super important conversation. I use filters a lot as well, but it's only if I get an email from somebody trying to sell me something that's not related to my practice or, like, shows up in my spam folder. I filter it to auto delete, and so I never see them again.
Yeah.
That's the only way I'm using my filter. For the way I'm leveraging my Google Workspace Gmail app, is I have 4, like, folders. Okay, it goes like this: my inbox, my follow-up, my archive, and my delete, and that's it. And I try to get as close to inbox 0 as possible, and while I don't always stick to it, I try to only look at my inbox, like, 2 or 3 times a day. And so that's how I handle it. Now, I still think you could do a combination of what we're doing, Lauren, where you could still filter it to be a particular client. And this again depends on your practice, right? I'm fractional general counsel. I'm just working on stuff all the time and I do maintain separate files. And if I can't believe I do this, but sometimes if there's a really important email, I will save it as a PDF to the file because 99.99% of the emails are not important. And so I just filter them away into archive after I finished up with them and follow up. And that just helps keep my brain organized with like not seeing a bunch of like to do things. It makes your email inbox not a to do list. But the filter thing is really important. And you could keep those filters to also go to the folders, but important ones you mark as follow up. So even if you're in that folder, you could see tagged in the Gmail, this is a follow up. This one's important. This one's priority. So that I guess would be my recommendation to the listeners on that if you wanted to take a hybrid approach to the way Lauren and I are doing it.
Yeah, and email management I think is really important. Not treating your inbox as a to-do list is huge. It has taken me so long to get away from that. It's so easy to do that because we're in there all the time. So I love of my softwares of what would be the next thing I probably couldn't live without is my task manager. So I use ClickUp. There's so much more that thing does because it's really built for teams that I don't use, but I just love it because I can send emails to my task list. So that allows me, instead of letting it sit in my inbox and I constantly see it and I'm just not ready to deal with it, I can send it to ClickUp. It'll create a task for me. And then I can, like you, file away the email so I don't have to look at it. And then I like that I can create templates for all my different types of cases. So when I get a new client, they're a new estate planning client, I can add the template of tasks to their folder and ClickUp. So for John Doe, I now have the full string of tasks, and then it just keeps me on top of things. I knock on wood, rarely have I haven't thought about that case in forever, or I forgot to follow up with that person. ClickUp really does help me stay on top of things. And I've tried tasks in Clio when I used them, wasn't as robust. You couldn't do like dependencies. So I need stuff like if I move it from Tuesday to Thursday, I need everything else to move after it. ClickUp really helped with that. I've used Asana in the past and I think that's similar, but having some sort of system where you know what do you need to work on, what's priority, what's going to keep you focused so you're out of your email, I think is really critical whatever that looks like. What does your task management system entail?
Yeah, so in addition to having 2 terabytes of cloud storage for through Google Workspace, and since I have the 2 companies, I've actually got 4 terabytes, but I really try to keep Kerber's first things separate from law firm things. I think I do a pretty good job about that. I also have 2 terabytes of iCloud storage, and then I also have an external SSD card that's 4 terabytes because my new Mac Mini M4 Pro is 4 terabytes. So I have, like, even physical backup, right? And then I've got my actual, like, SSD on my Mac Mini so I think I'm, like, quadruplicate. I've got all my data backed up in quadruplicate, which is crazy, but it's also all in the cloud in 2 places, so I get it from anywhere that I want. I am just using, like, the Mac folders integrated with Google Drive, primarily in the Mac, OS. So there's an app that you could download that integrates your Google Drive with your Mac, and it's a Google app so that you can just if things are saved and uploaded in Google Drive, you just interface with them just like in the folder system on the Mac. I've been using Macs forever. I'm super comfortable with it. I have just like so much of my work is just clients schedule calls with me, and then I schedule things on my calendar to review the contract, draft the contract. But like the nature of my practice being fractional GC, I haven't found like a good practice management system that like lets me do it that I can't just handle through an integration with Google Workspace and Mac OS. So that's enough for me right now. I have been super interested in like IT ticketing systems. I learned about this from Jack Shelton, episode 101 of Law Subscribed, Aegis Space Law. And they've found that's a good way. And it's good with teams, right? So a legal task comes in and it assigns it to the team member who's available. Now that would always be me, at least for now. Uh, but what it does is it lets you track things like in an IT ticketing system and update stuff. And so I almost wonder if I should be like looking more into that. And I've also been searching for, I did like a perplexity search on IT ticketing systems designed for law firms. I got nothing. So like maybe something there. But for me, the next piece of software was really, I was starting from scratch and I needed documents. And so it was a document database and automation platform. And for me, that was the Illinois Institute of Continuing Legal Education. They have a product called FormuLaw. Yes, it's a pun. I love it. They just added a W at the end of formula and it totally works. So they take the forms and you could plug stuff in there. And I don't use it as often anymore. It's only $29 a month. It used to be cheaper when I got started. But to have access to all of these forms that are automated are great. I find that I have like a checklist of I don't like the forms and I can't update the forms like you can in a gavel, right? So you could that's a reason you could leverage like a database and a gavel type thing together. And then to keep talking my book, since Gavel's a sponsor, 650 is like a like formula, but specific to HR and employment related legal stuff. So that and it's no offense to the Illinois Institute of Continuing Legal Education, but 650 just does a much better job because they also have that niche, right? They're just focused on these documents, not any like general practitioner document, right? So they do a 650 just does a much better job with the document database and automation platform. And they've done some interesting things with AI, as has Gavel, right, to superpower their software. So, and even Adobe uses AI. So we can't talk about some software without talking about AI. But these aren't like AI first platforms, even if they are automation or database based platforms. You may notice I don't quite have my 5 o'clock shadow and I'm in a different shirt. Well, that's because that was actually just part one of our software talk. Lauren and I went super long. And so we thought we are going to break it up into two parts because we don't want you to have to dedicate more than about a half hour to every single episode, 15 minutes if you're a two-time speeder like me. So that concludes part one of our software talk. Make sure you tune in to next episode where you're going to get the second half of my conversation with Lauren Lester on software for running a law firm in 2025. And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Make someone's day by sharing this episode with them. The best way to get in touch is to follow and message me on LinkedIn. To get extra content, subscribe to the newsletter at www.lawsubscribe.com, where you can also become a paid subscriber to get episodes and content early. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.